I want to talk about the different methods or techniques for miking a drum set like this or a drum kit. We'll start with the one microphone method and we'll keep adding mics. So we'll talk about the one mic, a two microphone method, three mics, four mics, and work our way up to what I currently have here, which is 10 microphones on this drum kit. Yeah, you can get good sound with everything, and I'm going to explain what my rationales are for the techniques and the kind of mics I would like to go for. And depending on what your budget is or what you currently have at your disposal, you should be able to find something that works perfectly for you. I'm also going to talk about these techniques in order of priority for me. So if I can have just one mic, if I can have just 2-3 mics, depending on what I can have, then these are the mics I will consider, and these are how I'm going to employ it. And this is standard drum kits. I've got the kick drum, a snare, 2 rack toms, and 1 floor tom. I've got the hi-hat and a bunch of cymbals. So basic drum kit setup. And let's get on with the one mic technique. Yep, tight spacing here. I've got drum sheets around, so putting a camera is quite tricky. Now, if you're mixing in a small space or your drum or your church is in a small room, then the acoustic sound of the drum set in the house is enough to fill the room, and you wouldn't really need to amplify the drums or to mic the drum. But even at that, you discover that the sound of the kick drum is usually lost in the mix, lost in the room rather. And if you would want to amplify any part of the drum kit, this is what you should consider. So my one mic technique is to mic the kick drum. Just the sound of the kick drum in the room, if it's really loud and it's coming out properly with all the click and the boominess, everything, it significantly changes the mood in the room, changes the music entirely. You can clap in the sound of the snare, you can clap in the sound of the toms, but you can't clap in or even tap the sound of the kick drum. You need that feel. So which is why it's very important for you to mic the kick drum. If you want to spend money on drum microphones, please, this from experience, spend the most money on the kick drum microphone. You can get knockoff versions of tom mics, knockoff versions of drum overheads, but you can't really get a knockoff version of kick drums that sound really good. So you need to spend very good money on these. There are lots of them out there. I'll link a few in the description that I usually use. My best kick drum microphone is the one I have inside here, which is the Shure Beta 91A. You don't have to get this, it's just something that works well for me. I usually throw one of these in my bag when I'm going out, and if I swap this for a knockoff version of a kick drum microphone that I find in any venue, without doing anything on the EQ or on the mixing console, it changes the sound. How you want to place this mic if you're using just one mic for your kick drum, we're talking about one mic anyway, you want to put the mic inside. You can get something like this as well, works the same. This is the Shure Beta 52A. You want to put this inside, maybe halfway through the back and the front drum heads, so that you're able to capture the sound of the beater hitting the drum head as well as the resonant boom of the drum shell. Both sounds together form your kick drum sound. You also want to experiment with mic placement, how far you want to put it in terms of how close to the beater head, and maybe whether you want to put it in the middle or not, just to get your sound. So it's worth experimenting. But what I usually do, throw one of these inside and my kick drum sound is settled. So let's jump into the two mic technique. If you've got budget for a second microphone after miking your kick drum, then you should consider an overhead microphone. So this is a 2 microphone technique, and this also considers that you're mixing in mono. So your kick drum is mic'd, you have one overhead microphone placed in the center on top of the kit. That picks up the sound of the entire kit. So you've got your snare, your toms, and your cymbals and hi-hat going into that microphone. For this microphone, you want to consider a condenser microphone. You can use a pencil condenser like this. This is the AKG C451B, which is what I've got here as well. But this, like assuming you're using just one. Or you can use a large diaphragm condenser microphone. Why condenser microphone for the overhead is simply because condenser microphone has better sensitivity than dynamic microphones, and they also have a wider frequency response than dynamic microphones. So they're able to reproduce the high frequency of the cymbals and the mid frequency of the tom, and also the low frequency of the floor tom as well perfectly. So that works well. The third microphone technique, if you have budget for an extra, is to add another overhead microphone. So you can have a stereo overhead microphone, one covering the left part of the kit, the other covering the right part of the kit, and then you have your kick drum microphone. I use this a lot and the fourth microphone, the 3 microphone technique and the four microphone technique. I'll get into the 4 microphone technique in a moment. I use them a lot, and you can really get good sounds from this. So one kick, a pair of overhead gives you a lot. So with this, now you have to be careful about phase issues, because when you have 2 mic or more than 1 mic picking the same sound from the same sound source, then you probably have to worry about how quickly the sound gets to both microphones. For example, the sound of the snare, sound travels in a constant speed. So if both microphones are different distance from the snare drum, for example, the sound of the snare drum gets into the microphone at different times. And when you mix this sound together, you might probably get an issue. You can't probably get all the sound of each item in the drum kit to arrive at the overhead at the same time. But our most important kit, other than the kick drum, is the snare drum, because the snare sound is almost in every bar of the song. So we want to make sure that the sound of the snare, if you're using a stereo overhead, you want to make sure the sound of the snare drum arrives at both overhead microphones at the same time, so that you don't have any phase issue. And how we're able to achieve this is to actually measure from the middle of the snare drum to both overhead microphones to make sure that the distance from the middle of the snare to the overhead microphones are exactly the same. You can measure it anyhow you want, but I usually use one cable. I just pick up this cable from here, and I measure from the middle of the snare drum to the first overhead, like so, and then I make sure that same distance applies from the middle of the overhead to the other microphone. So I've got a little bit. I just have to drop this mic. Oh no, that's not too low. Drop this a little bit and measure again. Yep. So with this, I'm sure that my snare sound, and the snare drum is usually very loud. So yeah, you want to make sure you get that. It's just an extra thing for you to do anyway. And let's move on to the 4 microphone technique. You probably might have already guessed it. If I have another microphone to throw into this, then I'll put 1 microphone for the snare drum, so I'll get the snare drum sound closely mic'd. And for that, a dynamic microphone works really well, a kind of microphone we use for vocal work. But what I've got here is the Shure SM57, which is a very, very popular microphone for miking the snare drum. You can also use a clip-on microphone like what you usually use for miking tom closely. I'll get to that in a bit, for the snare as well. So let's assume we're using the Shure SM57 for the snare drum. We mic the top of the snare drum. Now, where you usually place your microphone is, you probably should experiment with that. You should also experiment with your microphone placement for the kick drum as well. I'm not sure I mentioned it. And so what I usually do when mixing, I place the snare drum about, say, 1 to 2 inches away from the head of the snare drum, and I place the microphone pointing halfway between the rim and the middle of the snare drum. I just found that works well for me here, but it's for you to experiment just to get the kind of sound you want. If you want the snare to sound a little bit ringy, you should take the mic closer to point closer to the rim. If you want it to sound full-bodied, you should point it closer to the center of the kit. So that's our 4 microphone technique. This 4 microphone technique is the one I've used the most. Just 4 microphones, the kick mic, the snare mic, and 2 overhead, and you get really good sound from that. Now, it's worth mentioning that the progression of this video is in order of priority for me. So whatever I've said, if I have just 1 mic to mic the drum, I would definitely consider just miking the kick. If I have to mic with 3 microphones, for example, I would just consider the pair of overhead and the kick. And if I have an extra mic to throw in there, then it will be a snare drum microphone. After the 4 mic technique, what I usually do is to probably mic all of the toms. So that adds 3 extra mic into my microphones, which basically takes you to a 7 microphone technique. I usually see lots of a microphone, drum microphone sets that has just 5 microphones inside. So you have a kick mic, a snare mic, and 3 tom mics. If that's what you have, that's fine, but I'm not very okay with close miking the toms and then not doing an overhead, not having an overhead microphone, because you need the sound of the cymbal anyway to be in your mix. And if the drummer is using in-ears, then I don't know how they're able to play without being able to hear the sound of the cymbal, because I think it's really helpful for them. And for me, the sound engineer, if I'm mixing monitors, I want to have overhead microphones in my mix, because that's how I'm able to get the drummer to play softly or quietly anyway. Drummers who are very cymbal hungry, just put a little bit of the cymbal or put more of the cymbal in their ears. It helps them play quieter. Yeah, that's a tip from me. I want to take out this time to mention that you should check out my online course, The Fundamentals of Live Audio Engineering. I've put a link to it in the description. This course is designed to take you from whatever level you are into a professional level, and it's a course I've created with a practical approach. So check it out, link in the description. Also, join the channel membership for some exclusive things from me. Some of these videos I'm making lately have been suggestions from channel members. So, and also, I'm very busy, my daily job and trying to do YouTube on the side. So I go through your comments and I might not really have all the time to reply to it. But if you're a channel member, I have the obligation to reply to you anyway. So yeah, consider that. Link also is in the description. So yeah, we've talked about 4 mic techniques. Now a 7 mic technique where you have to add 3 other microphones to close mic the tom. With this, you can use clip-on microphones like this. You can even buy knockoff version of these microphones and they'll still give you good tom sound. But buy good microphones if you can, because good sound at the source helps your mixing experience to be a whole lot better and enjoyable. So I've got here the Sennheiser microphones, the Sennheiser E604 microphones, close mic for the toms, and these are really good microphone. Just like I said about the Snare microphone, the placement of this microphone depends on the sound you want. I usually put this, just as I mic the snare, 1 or 2 inches away from the drum head, and then pointing halfway between the rim and the center of the toms, and they kind of give me the sound I want. With this, you can get a cleaner mix. You can put gates on these toms when you're mixing, and you really get a full-bodied tom sound. Now, moving on, we've talked about the 7 microphone technique. This is the most popular one. The 7 microphone technique is you can buy a drum microphone set with 7 mics inside, a kick mic, a snare mic, tom mics, and a pair of overhead. That should work really well for you. But if you have an extra mic you want to throw in there, then consider miking your hi-hat. The hi-hat microphone is also a condenser microphone I use for it. I've got here a Shure microphone, which is the Shure SM137. It's condenser. You can also use the kind of microphone you use in miking your overheads to mic the hi-hats. Anyway, it just gives you that extra sizzling effect. It's usually good if you have the mic to throw in there. And yeah, mic placement here, I just put it closer to the rim of the hi-hat. Kind of what works for me. I don't want it coming inside. I want to get a thin sound as much as possible. Getting this closer to the middle gives you a bell kind of sound. So I take it closer to the rim and gives me the kind of sound I want. And that's an 8 mic technique. Now the 10 microphone technique, which we currently have here, is to add 2 extra microphones, 1 extra for the snare drum and 1 extra for the kick drum. For the kick drum, what I have here, I have the Shure I have the Shure Beta 91A, sorry, as my kick in, and I've got the Shure Beta 52A as my kick out. With the kick in, like we said, when using a single microphone, put it inside, that lives there, and then the kick out, you can position it however you want, depending on what you're going for. I just have it at just outside the cutout, the drum cutout, and it lives there. The kick in emphasizes the sound of the drum, the beater hitting the kick drum head, and that gives me that clicky sound. That's a very good sound for me. It emphasizes the attack of the kick drum, and then the kick out emphasizes the boominess, the resonant boom of the kick drum. And when you blend those 2 sounds together, it gives you a very full kick. Really good if you have the luxury of 2 microphones. And it helps me, I don't have to do a big EQ when I'm using I'm using 1 kick microphone, where I have to use mic placements to see if I want to emphasize the attack, and then use EQ to actually boost to the low end in this situation. Now, for the snare, the second snare mic is a snare bottom. The first one we talked about was a snare top. The second one is the snare bottom. That should be positioned almost in opposite way as you've positioned the top snare top. but that's microphone usually is to pick the snares, the snare wires, to actually give you that chilling effect you have with the snare drum. When you blend both sound, the sound of the snare top and the sound of the snare bottom, it gives you what you want. That's a 10 microphone technique. If I have to have one microphone between the two kick mics and two snare mics, I will use one kick mic and use two snare mics. Two snare mics is actually the way to go, because without the snare bottom, for me, I think I've been spoiled by having to use two snare mics a lot. One snare mic sounds like the snare is like another tom for me, but having the second snare mic, the one that picks the snare wire sound, blending them together is really good. Now here's something to mention when using two kick mics and two snare mics is polarity issue, kind of phase issues. Again, polarity inverse simply means something that's 180 degrees out of phase has an inverse polarity. So you want to, for example, the snare top and the snare bottom, you want to invert the polarity of one so that the sound don't cancel out each other. Because when you hit the snare drum, the way sound works, it works by vibration. So when you hit the snare drum, for example, the sound waves you get from the top and the bottom are 180 degrees out of phase, which like they are opposite of each other. So when one goes up, the other one comes down. And if you take both sounds, the microphone are picking the same sound but inverse of each other. When you bring both sounds together, they kind of cancel out. So you want to invert the polarity of one, which I usually invert the polarity of the snare bottom, so that both of them can be in phase. I've also noticed occasionally, which is quite odd, that when I invert it, it sounds worse than when I don't invert one. So listen to it, whatever works for you, stick with it. I do the same thing with the kick drum as well. I just like testing if I invert one, does it sound better, both of them together, or if I leave it the way it is. And what sounds best for me is what I usually go with. No matter how many microphones you're using on the kit, if you're using two overheads, then you need to make sure the sound of the snare drum gets to both overhead microphones at the same time. And yep, here's your how to mic your drum kit video, and I hope you like it. If you found this video helpful, give it a like, subscribe, and share it with your friends, and also comment. Please like the video, that's very important for the algorithm. Thank you very much for watching this video till the end, and check another video. I'll see you there. Bye for now.